artist by the name of Ruth Naomi Keenan. She too also worked in the art department at LaMonte. Now, for those who are still wondering, where exactly was LaMonte in Nutley? I have here a portion of a map of Nutley from 1932. On the east side here is Passaic Avenue. You got Yannicor School right there. There are the train tracks going from Nutley. That's Kingsland. And over here, which I've circled, that's LaMonte. You got a cathedral right there. Roach later going over here. There's Nichols Park. Apparently Nichols Park had a pond at one point. And I got a zoom in of the circle. And there's a zoom in of the zoom in. Now, to the best of my abilities, I outlined the property, and then went to Google Maps, got a satellite image, and tried to get the scale just right, and overlaid it and such. Now, I admit it's not to 100% accurate scale. For example, that building should be outlined, or the outline should be around that building. But I do know these lines up here are in the right spot to the original retaining wall that still stands there. If you drive along Kingston today, you actually can still see essentially what was the basement wall of the administration building. Such. And that corner right there is the corner you see in this photo. These photos from the 1960s, they were taken by Mr. Wilson's father. Such. So you're looking at the administration building, and here you're looking at the railroad dock. Pretty much the rail line coming through Nutley was part of the Erie Railroad, later the Erie Lackawanna. Peel off the main line near Newark, went through Nutley up to Patterson. So you got fresh paper deliveries here on this loading dock. You go into the plant, return the safety paper back into the railroad, and goes anywhere it needs to go to return it to checks and such. Another view of the loading dock here. This is looking east towards New York City. And this is a nice convenient transition because Mr. Wilson does have more photos, and he's now going to take us a trip through the factory, show you what the production process was like, and show some of the workers who used to work there, and who knows, you might actually recognize some people here and there. So I do turn it over. Okay, so Mr. Wilson's watching you. Okay. I'm not kidding. 1984 vibes here. Once again, I'd just like to thank everybody for coming out tonight. Thank you for your warm welcome as well. Such, and it was a fun project, but I just happened to fall into this because I was helping Mr. Wilson catalog his father's Lionels, and when he mentioned the project, that's when I decided to help him out. Such. So without further ado, here's Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, so we have a lot of history, so now we know the reasons that LaMonte was created, the company was created, and some of their products. So now the picture show that we're going to have now is twofold. First, we're going to see some of the personalities that work there. Maybe a relative of yours or a friend, or maybe you. I don't think there's anybody in there who's going to be in that. But the important thing behind the people, my dad took the pictures to document the people, but in the background, we looked out and there's shots taken all over the factory. So we can expand upon each picture and show you the different departments that were inside the building and outside the building. So that's really the best part we have. So here we just have the loading dock outside. And that's Ruth and Wally Woodham. I don't have the names on everybody, but I have the names on some of them. And that was just where the loading dock, a lot of things came in by train in the beginning. A lot of the paper came in blank rolls from the paper mills up in the Northeast. And then later on, as trucking and all got more advanced, the trucks got larger, then a lot of the papers were brought in, by trucks. So the loading dock kept expanding. In the 50s, late 50s, there was a very large building project there on the site. At one time, LaMonte's employed over 300 people. So it was a big employer from a lot of surrounding towns and a lot of Nutleyites that worked there through the years. So on the, this is just one of the box cars. That's how things used to come in there by, I don't have that fellow's name, unfortunately. But I do have a person in the audience that actually worked there unloading one of the box cars in his youth. So Chief Bob DeLitt is here, and he told me a story the other day about how he was unloading the box cars. He worked in a number of the departments at the factory, but when he was unloading the box cars, it was done by hand. These rolls of paper that would come in were 1,000 pounds or more. and you had to unload them with a small little forklift. You didn't have an electric forklift, you had a manual forklift, like a dolly or a cart that you had to take it around with. So you had to get it off of there, you had to muscle it off, get it off of the car, get it into the building, through the doorways. Don't bump up against any of the side of the frame or anything going through there against the machine, because then you nick the paper on the side, you can wreck a lot of the paper and cause waste. So it was, you had to be muscle, but you had to be smart and kind of really good about your balance, and also you didn't lose control of the paper. And then I think Bobby talked one time too, after he had got done unloading one of the box cars, there was a lightning strike right where he had been. So I guess we're fortunate that you're here today. So I don't know if that was an omen, a good omen or a bad omen, but so it's just another one of the guys that unloaded the box cars were big guys. They were like stevedore type guys, and I don't have his name either, unfortunately, but just to show you all the things that went on back then. Now this is how we're going to do the process. Dad did a sketch for me to show how the actual machines worked. And there was 14 of these machines that were in the factory at one time. And they were all, there's 2 or 3 men that would run that. It was a super hot place to work. When Dad went there in '49, he talked about it was the hottest place he'd ever worked. And he told his father, said, I ain't going back. I can't work there, it's just too hot. But he went back and persevered for 20 more years. Got married, had my brother and I, bought a house, bought a car, so it paid the bills, and he enjoyed working there right to the end. So he had a really good time working there. So how the machines worked is the big rolls of paper would start here, and they would have to muscle them out, again, on the hand trucks, get them up onto the machine, and it could be up to 1,000 pounds. We have the roll, at the end of the roll right there on one of them. Right here, that's what it looked like. Only just we'll see in a later picture. We'll see the big rolls. It would go from there. It would have to go. These are all rollers, all the circles that are there, and pardon my artwork, but those are all rollers that you had to feed the paper through. So there was a whole way that you had to go through the different rollers, thread it through there, get it all through, get the wrinkles out, get the tension right. There was a lot to it. One fellow was the back tender. He had all the technical part of getting the paper tight in there so it wouldn't be wrinkled, so it would go through all the printers right. And this is where the color bath was, and that's where they inked the paper, because it was all white. Remember, it was plain paper that came in. And this cylinder here, we're going to see that in a later picture, is the steel cylinder that had the bank's name. They had a vault that had probably 500, 600, 700 of those steel cylinders in it, and each of them had a bank's logo or the name of the company or whatever design they wanted on the paper. And that's, they changed that out like 1 time a day, 2 times a day, 5 times a day. They weighed a couple 100 pounds also. They had to be brought in by a winch over the ceiling, had to be checked out. Security was really big because everything there, they were trying to make things secure. So they had to have security within the building also for all the different materials. So that would get changed. They go through here, and then the color bath is where the inks were. And that was one of the proprietary things that they had, the special ink that they created there. And it changed colors depending on what the contract called for. So they had people that were in charge of color, that had really good, were not colorblind obviously, and could really match up the colors to spec, because the specs were very tight. We have the company manual that was put out in 1960 with the step-by-step process of what they had to do to get the ink the right color. And they would take samples every so many feet on the roll to ensure that the quality control was there. So one fellow's job was just to come around and match the colors. And if it was that off color a little bit, they had to stop the process, change it a little bit more, add a little bit dye in there, mix it up properly. And then it would come out of the color bath. It would go up through these areas, through these rollers, and everything was steam driven. It was, when the plant was first built, remember, electricity was just being kind of commercialized back then. So a lot of things were steam driven, hence being so hot within the factory. And a lot of the machinery here all had steam dryers. So we see that the little conglomeration at the end there, and that's how they dried the paper, with steam. So you'd say, well, how does steam dry things? But they were heating up the metal rollers that were there, and the metal rollers were in fact drying the paper. And there was a lot of tensions that they had to get just right for it to come through there properly, so that it wouldn't have any creases in it. Some of the paper coming from the factories would have a hole in it somewhere, so they had to make up for that, you know, to make sure it got through the machine, didn't get jammed. It was dangerous work because there was, you know, inks there that they're dealing with, the steam, and your fingers. You know, the fingers are all these rollers. Your hands are in there trying to just feed this paper through. So a lot of black nails, you know, from different guys during the year. Fortunately, I never had any really bad injuries there. That at least the 20 years my dad was there, but a lot of pinched fingers, a lot of paper cuts, of course, dealing with paper and all that. So it was quite a process there. And this is one of the more advanced machines. It has what's called a super calendar on the end of it. And when you calendar paper, that's a term that they had to do. It's the second step of the process. Once they imprinted it and got it designed the way they wanted it, then the paper had to be polished, and it had to be brought down to the weight that they wanted, and they had to get the moisture to where it had to be. So there was a lot of steps and a lot of people that were involved with this quality control. So the calendar, we're going to see a separate calendar department that existed for a while. But the later machines had the calendar system built into the end, so they could do everything in one step there. Because remember now, this paper came, was rolled onto a roll, and then it was unrolled, and then it was rolled back up again. So if they didn't have that calendar system on the end, they had to take it off the roll again, put it through more rollers, roll it back up again. And of course, all during that time, damage could occur. Wrinkles could occur, edges could get damaged, so there would be a loss of materials. So this is one of the machines where they're just getting the paper going now. So you can see there's quite a process involved with that to get it all through there and to get the wrinkles out. So there's always a certain amount of waste, of course, in the beginning, you know, when you're trying to get it through there. But that shows a lot of the steam pipes coming in there. And there was no air conditioning. There was no fans. They had skylights. You know, they had what's called a sawtooth roof, and they opened the skylights. And that's how they would let light in, because there weren't lights